Good evening, good evening. How are you this evening? Everyone get in okay? Everyone happy? Can you hear us all right? Fantastic. Well, Bessel, thank you first of all for being here.
A delight to be here.
It's a great pleasure to have you here. I'm sure everyone knows who Bessel van der Kolk is, otherwise I can't imagine why you'd be here. But in case you were dragged along by a partner, Bessel is the author of the best-selling book, The Body Keeps the Score, a distinguished scientist, a distinguished academic researcher and psychiatrist. Bessel.
Yes.
Let's start with the low-hanging fruit.
Yeah.
What is, if you like, the core of trauma?
That's a good opening question. Trauma is really something happens to you that leaves you dumbfounded, befuddled, helpless, and in a state of, oh my God. So it's a state of utter helplessness. And then what we have learned over the years is that if you're in that state and somebody takes over for you, your mom, your dad, the nurse, somebody else, you tend to be okay. But as important as what happens to you is who is there for you at that point to take over when you can no longer do anything. And when there's nobody, you really get paralyzed in a way. Yeah.
Okay, so interestingly, your answer is about an internal landscape.
Yes, indeed.
And often
very important. Yeah. That's it. So people think about the trauma is about an event in the past. Let's talk about an event in the past. But the real issue is that that event is over, but your mind and brain on some level cannot register it's over, and you get stuck there. And so you continue to behave and feel and sense as if the threat is still coming back. And that is the nature of trauma, is that your mind, brain continues to feel like it's continuing, it's still happening now. So trauma changes your brain and changes your mind. So that original event is important, but the real issue is you really have a different orientation to your life right now.
Can you say a little bit more about stuck?
Yeah.
I mean, I think you and me kind of implicitly know what that means, but imagine you're someone here listening who don't really know what that means. What does it mean to be stuck there? I mean, what actually is the difference both on the inside of the person and what would you notice about them from the outside?
On the inside, you keep feeling and behaving as if it's still happening. But you may not even know that you're feeling and behaving because of that event, but maybe people around you will say, boy, you get really scared, or boy, you get really angry. But you may not even be aware that your anger and your fear is actually related to the past event. So it's really reactivity. And then you go to a therapist or somebody who says, oh, how long has it been going on? Oh, this must be because you were raped or abused or whatever. But people rarely make the connection themselves. It's really their behavior, their relationships aren't doing well. They find themselves really, things get not working out. And they start feeling, I need help to sort of why everything is not working. Yeah.
And so there's kind of like an invisible thread from the past to the present.
Yeah.
Would you say also it's the reason why people repeat mistakes over and over again, or repeat?
That's a whole other complex issue.
Okay.
Is part of what happens when you get traumatized, you have a hard time learning from experience. And so it is very hard to go on and learn new things and put the old stuff behind. And so in some ways you get frozen in time. There may be people here whose dads were in the Second World War. They may never have talked about the Second World War, but they may say, my dad was never really there, or my dad was always working, or my dad was always hiding behind the newspaper, and then from time to time he may have gotten very angry, maybe not, but he wasn't there anymore. And it's a very important part of getting traumatized is you're not really very alive for the present. And so what happens in the mind and the brain, you have these horrible feelings and sensations. You try to sort of control it. You say, I want to go on with my life. And you learn to shut yourself down. But as you shut yourself down, you stop feeling pleasure, you stop feeling excitement, and life gets very shallow and drained of experience. Yeah.
So that's kind of in a depressing catalogue of personal experiences.
Yeah.
But when you put that into the world, when you put that into relationship, when you put that into a village, a community, or a family, what's going on between the people that are then, when one or more is suffering?
It depends to some degree about where the nature of the threat is. If everybody has had the same threat, they may continue to feel safe with each other, and people may really support each other. But if people in your community are the source of the threat, then you really get defensive, and you see a lot of explosions. You see that in the inner city, that people form gangs, and they start sort of replaying nasty stuff because they live in a world of danger and fear and domination, and they cannot get out of that paradigm, basically. Yeah. And so, for example, we have worked with gangs in Boston, and we used to go to their funerals if somebody got shot, and we talked to these gang members, and said, so you knew that there might be a shooting over there, yeah? And so why did you go anyway? I said, it doesn't matter, we don't feel anything. So it doesn't matter if somebody's going to get shot, because that's just because the rest of the time we feel dead unless we are really doing very dangerous stuff.
So that sounds like a double-edged sword, because what you're talking about is being, in a way, contained within a community, but the community is also the source of the trauma, so it goes on and on.
It could be, huh? So, for example, I have a little cabin in Vermont, and the last few years there have been 2 terrible floods, and every store in our main town got destroyed, and everybody gets together to help. Right. So a natural disaster happened after 9/11 in New York, tremendous threat, but nobody was blaming anybody. No, your neighbors were not responsible. You didn't feel ashamed about yourself, and people really got together. So trauma can really bring people together as long as they can trust their neighbors. And then it can be a very consolidating experience, actually. Happened here in London in the Second World War, I think. Yeah.
Right, the Blitz spirit.
Yeah.
But can we unpack that a little bit more? Because I guess one of the things that you want to think about once you start to see trauma in yourself or in your relationships or in the world around you is, what are the things that mitigate trauma? What is making it better or worse in our society, in our world, or through our history?
Clearly, the biggest thing is to trust whoever is around you. And so if you can trust the people around you, you can sort of relax and say, maybe even though I have these weird reactions, people around me have my back and are protecting me. But if the people around you are the source of the threat, and so what we see in our practice is people who have been abused within their own families, and who have been beaten up or molested in their own families, and then you cannot tell the truth, because the moment you tell the truth, people in your family will turn on you and say you're a liar, and they don't want to really upset the apple cart most of the time. So that there's a very core feeling, need that we have. We need to belong. And we need to belong to certain communities, certain ethnic groups, certain people. And as long as you have the feeling of belonging, you organize yourself very much around that tribe that you belong to. And if the tribe itself is actually the origin of your hurt, it is I see this all the time. I regularly get to see members of a cult, or members of extreme Orthodox, Muslim, Christian, Jewish sects. They come to see me and they say, I say, where you come to see me? And they say, because nobody in my world knows you, and they don't know, and I'm safe with you because you are not a member of my community, then they tell me what's happening in that community. You often have very bad stuff. They almost always go back. Because leaving your community, leaving the people you belong to, is extremely difficult.
So what do you do? I mean, let's say you're a clinician or a friend, and you... did you get that on the AV desk? No one in this section can hear anything. I don't know what the feedback is. Maybe you need to hold your mic up.
Oh, can you hear him better than me? Okay, good. So I'll just talk more clearly. Okay, good.
So who didn't hear everything that Bessel just said? Some people, and over there. It said it's too echoey.
There's not much we can do about echoes.
There's not much you and me can do about it. I'm going to trust the powers that be, the gods of AV, will continue to try and improve your experience. But thank you for your feedback. It's much better to know during the event than after, if you can't hear it. Well, that was a live moment of us all belonging together.
Right.
Right.
But we were responsive, hopefully.
Hopefully.
So hopefully they feel safe with us because we listen to them.
Yeah, so the idea that Bessel was talking about, in case you couldn't hear it, was really about there's a kind of paradox of belonging, isn't there? Because some of the groups that you can belong to can be the origin of your trauma.
That's right.
And yet, not belonging to anything is very traumatic.
Right.
And so I was about to ask, if you're working either clinically or, if you're concerned about someone in your life, and they face that kind of very difficult junction point, it's kind of like a toss-up between belonging in your world and belonging to yourself.
That's right.
And what would you do or say at that point, as a professional, or even just as a friend?
The thing that came up in our conference in Oxford, we just came from Oxford, big trauma conference, is that everybody talks in terms of individual psychotherapy. But the way I learned about trauma was in groups. And I think groups are very important. So to meet somebody who is an incest survivor, and when you're an incest survivor, you feel like, this was done to me, but I need my family, and it's horrible. You get these really complex internal states of not feeling safe, but not feeling safe to go out either. And then when you meet other people in the same situation, you start identifying with each other, and you start sort of forming an alliance with people. I think the 12-step programs are a very good idea. When you're an alcoholic, nobody likes you, people are against you. You go to a 12-step program and you meet other people who go through the same thing, and you start having a little island of safety of people who know what you're going through, and you might be able to separate a little bit from your core group that may be traumatizing to you because you have a new community for yourself. Happens all the time. People convert to new religions, they have a new place to belong, and they can leave the old place behind. Yeah.
Okay, so I'm going to throw out something a little controversial for you here. You are advocating for finding your group and strengthening your bond and belonging. And there's a lot of that going on in the world right now.
Yeah.
And you don't like it. It's happening in a toxic...
Scary as hell what's going on, yeah.
Scary as hell.
Yeah.
And yet you've just said that makes people feel good.
Yeah. And we see this, that people get polarized, and people doing things that are clearly morally indefensible, but because people are scared, they sort of gloss over that, and they other people. So the President of America says, all Mexicans are rapists. And then we know that the problem is those people out there, and he says, and we can be safe if we get rid of those other people. And so a very important part of how people have always behaved is to other people. They're not like us. That gives us permission to do terrible things to other people. So belonging is essential. We all need to belong, but the price we do for doing that is we may become very blind to our own group that we belong to. Yeah.
So we're kind of living both in England, I mean in America, and now beginning to live in England in that kind of syndrome where polarization and fragmentation is going on. But, you know, in our lifetime, we also have the memory of, particularly here in Westminster, thinking about the Northern Ireland trouble.
Yeah.
I mean, if you went back to the 70s and you're on the streets of London, it was not uncommon to be afraid of bombings here.
There was for good reason.
There was an MP who obviously was blown up in his car just over the road. And yet, Ireland and Northern Ireland, they're not there today in the same way they were then.
Yeah.
What's the hope from that?
It's really, I think Ireland is a really amazing, if there's a place of hope to my mind, it's Ireland. Ireland was a very oppressed country under the Catholic Church, and it had the belonging, I'm Catholic, I'm Protestant, give me a right to kill you. And at some point, people felt safe enough to say, we're just people. And now in Ireland, people don't define themselves anymore by their religion, except when things get really tight, people go. but that othering has sort of stopped, and the question is, what happened here? Well, part of it was that the economy became much better. Part of it, I think, is because the power of the church became much less. So people much less identified with, this is my religion, that's your religion. So I think Ireland is a great, hopeful example of that people sometimes really are able to emerge from that. But it is not, unfortunately, Ireland doesn't get replicated all the time. And usually these things end up in very bad situations.
But do you think that they end up in bad situations and then people have had enough and then somehow the whole arc starts again? And does this have a relationship between kind of the trauma of the individual in their neurobiology and the collective neurobiology of trauma in a community, in society?
You know, in some of the neuroscience work that we and my colleagues have done, we show that there's a certain state of the brain called the default mode network, which is what your brain is like when you're not doing anything, when you're just not engaged with anything. And what you see in traumatized people, the default mode network is sort of dead. There's nothing happening. So that when there is no danger in people's life, they don't feel anything. And then when they get exposed to danger, they feel alive. And that's really a very troublesome thing about us as humans. Once we get traumatized, we may get very addicted to hurting, being hurt, being preoccupied with hurt. The American president is a good example. Always angry, always feeling victimized. And that makes you feel better. So anger and victimization can feel you a sense of righteousness, and these are my people and those are bad people. And that's part of being human, is that you can really feel alive. My favorite teacher in my training said something that really all stuck with me. He says, hate makes the world go round.
Hate makes the world
go round. Hate makes the world go round. And there's some truth to that. Love makes the world go round, but hate also makes the world go round. And hate can become a very powerful emotion to make you feel alive.